Uh, we were discussing about looping statements in C. We have seen quite a number of examples for while loop. While loop is the first or simplest looping mechanism. Others are also simpler only. But if you understood the concept of while loop, how it works, then other looping mechanism, do while and for loop, are also working in the same manner. Okay. So let me ask some questions. This is one minimal implementation of while loop. How many times this is the loop body? How many times this loop will work? Can someone answer? How many times this will work? Or this loop body will execute if I am putting this in a program. Anyone?
Sir, infinite.
Infinite times. Is it the answer?
No, it doesn't execute.
Yeah. The correct answer is this body will not execute at all because we have 0 here. 0 means false. The first time itself it is false. So this will not execute at all. Now, how many times? How many times? I have explained this whole thing. This,
Infinite.
yeah.
It keeps executing.
Eh? Can you be a
Infinite.
little louder or my
Infinite.
volume is lower? This will execute how many times?
Infinite times.
Infinite times. Because here I have a non-zero value. Even though we expect a relational expression normally, a a constant value or a simple variable also will go there. It is acceptable syntactically. So 5 is a non-zero value. It is considered as true. So this is going to execute infinite times. Okay. Now if I put something like this, how many times? In this case also it will execute infinite times because I am not comparing. This is not a relational expression. This is assignment. So what will happen is this is same as the whole expression will return 5, or this is that x equal to 5 is same as putting 5 there. So again it is going to execute infinite times. But by accidentally, if many times we will want to put this one, but accidentally we put this one, and that will end up in infinite loop. But this one, if you are putting based on the value, the loop will execute. The loop will execute only when x is equal to 5. Okay. When only when x is getting a value 5, only then this will execute. Okay. And if the value of x is all the time 5, then it is going to execute infinite times. If the value of x is 5 and it is not changing at all, this is going to execute infinite times. Now this will execute all the time when x is not equal to 5. Reverse of the negation of the previous case. The loop will execute as long as x is not equal to 5. The moment x is not equal to 5, x not equal to 5 will evaluate to false and will not execute this loop and proceed to the remaining part. Okay, this much about while loop. Then we saw practically how this execution flow happens by putting breakpoint and executing one by one, statement by statement. Now we will move on to a small variant of uh, while loop, that is do while loop, the second looping mechanism, do while loop. Okay. So as I said, this will execute this, the body of the loop will execute 0 times. So if you want to see that, only out of loop is coming, hello world is not coming. That means this body of the loop did not execute. Okay. If I put I less than 5, I less than 5, Can someone tell me how many times this loop will execute? Initial value of I is 0. I am checking for the condition I less than 5 and I am incrementing I by 1 every time. So how many times this loop body will execute, or how many times hello world will be printed? Can someone quickly tell?
4 times.
Is it 4 times? First I is equal to 0. 0 less than 5 is true, 1 time executed. Then I will become 1. 1 less than 5, second time it is executed. Then I is equal to 2. 2 less than 5 is true. Third time it is executed. I becomes 3. 3 less than 5. Fourth time it is executed. Then I becomes 4. 4 less than 5 is true. Again fifth time it is executed. So for the values of I 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4, the loop body is going to get executed. So I less than 5, since I started from 0 and condition is I less than 5, I can take 5 values including 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. For all of them this condition is true and the body of the loop will execute 5 times. Okay. Now if I put equal to 5, how many times it will execute? If it is less than 5, I less than 5 is the condition, 5 times it will execute. If it is equal to 5, how many times this will execute?
6 times.
Yeah? Can you be louder?
6 times.
6 times. One more time. For one more value of I, that is 5. For that case also it is going to execute the body of the loop. So 5 less than or equal to is true. 5 less than 5 is false, but 5 less than or equal to is true. It is going to execute. So based on the initial value we are providing and based on the boundary condition we are providing, it will execute as many times as possible. So basically it depends on how many values I can take such that this condition is true. Okay. So this case, the base case, I equal to 0, I less than 5, and every time we are incrementing by 1, then all these values of for all these values of I, the loop body is going to execute. That means 5 times the loop body is going to execute. Okay. Okay. Then we will go back. Loop body will not execute because first time itself it is 0. False. Condition is checked and it is false, so loop body will not execute. From there we are going into while loop. I'm just do while loop. I'm just commenting out while loop so that you can have a comparison. Okay. So do while starts like this. The keyword do and then the body of the loop. Then we have the condition checking. While I'll put 0. And there is a semicolon. In do while, after the while statement, there is a semicolon. Okay, that is the small difference there. Now my while is here, and when this was the condition, this loop body did not execute at all. I did not get any hello world. Now we'll see what will happen in this case. I'll put the same statements here. Okay. Maybe this is not required now. This time, how many times this will execute? This body will execute. Can anyone tell? It's going to execute one time. Okay. When I gave while 0, when I gave while loop with the 0 in the within the parenthesis, this body did not execute at all. But same thing when I provided in a do while loop, the body of the loop executed once. That's why I get hello world printed once. That is the difference between while and do while. In case of while, we check the condition in the beginning only, and if it is true, then we execute the body. So here it was false, that is why it did not execute. But in do while, we execute the body first, at least once. We execute the body first, then go and check the condition. Okay, so here checking the condition implies we are deciding whether to execute the body for the first time or not. First time, whether to execute the body at least one or not. Here when I am doing after the body of the loop, if I am checking, I am going to decide whether to continue one more time execution of this. So minimum one time execution is guaranteed. Second time it needs to execute or what, that is decided by this while statement. So that time 0 means false, so it will not continue for a second time, it will proceed to the remaining statements in the program. Okay, so if I put a breakpoint and see the flow, or I will put it here only, okay, just from the beginning. So debug, start with F8. Okay, so our debug window is there, F7 I press, so directly goes into, so do anyway doesn't make a difference, it directly goes into the executable statement. Okay, this is a control statement, so go to the executable statement, it executes, then it goes to the statement after the entire loop. So with that we get hello world as well as out of loop. So that is do while, small difference. While loop will be executed at least, the 0 or more times. While loop will be executed 0 or more times. Do while will be executed 1 or more times. Minimum one time the loop body will be executed. Here minimum it will be 0. That means first time itself the condition is false. Okay. Otherwise, as I said, whatever you do with while loop can be achieved with do while loop and vice versa. This is sort of a redundant case. Now the requirement for while loop, probably do while loop, is that in our example of sum of in our example of sum of first n numbers, we have the value of n here. That means before entering the loop body, or before executing the loop body, we are clear that what is the boundary condition or when to terminate, because we have the value of n already, and I less than or equal to n is our condition for executing the body or otherwise come out. But in do while is used when we don't have prior information when to stop it. Probably that information is built up or received within the body of the loop. If you are getting the information about the boundary condition within the body of the loop, in that case do while is useful. One such example is, see, I am taking here I have a do while loop. I am taking the input, enter a number using a scanf within the body of the loop, and based on the value of n I am going to decide whether to continue or not. So minimum one time executing this body is essential now, because I am taking the input from the user within the body of the loop, and the value I received from the user, that I am using here to decide whether to continue or not. So if I execute this code, it may be more clear. Okay. Preferably you follow this one, return int main and return 0. Now initially n value we don't know. This is a user input. Now based on user input we should decide whether to continue execution or not. And at least once we have to get the user input. Then only we can decide. Now what this program does is, I'll just execute that program. It will find the sum of n numbers entered by the user. It is not sum of first n numbers from 1 to n. Here sum of all the numbers entered by the user. Okay, as long as user keeps entering any non-zero value, it will find the sum. And when the moment user enters a 0, it will stop the process and it will come out of the program. I'll just execute this, enter a number. So this is coming from the loop body. Enter a number is coming from the loop body. I enter 5. Again it is asking enter a number because I am executing the loop body one more time. How did it happen? First time enter a number, 5 is entered, that is stored in variable n, and we are cumulatively adding whatever number entered by the user into a variable called sum. So initially sum was 0. Next time when user enters a number, non-zero number, I am adding it into sum. Sum is equal to sum plus n. 0 plus n. N was 5. So sum becomes 5. Now what is the condition I am checking? N not is equal to 0. 5 not equal to 0. So it is going to execute the body of the loop one more time. That is for the second time. So this time I enter 4. 4 is entered. Sum was already 5. 5 plus 4, 9. Okay. Now condition is still n not is equal to 0. 4 not is equal to 0. What it will do? It will do execute the loop for a third time. I entered this, entered 1. So what happened? Sum of all these numbers are now stored in variable sum. Because of my statement sum is equal to sum plus n. Whatever new number entered by the user, that will be stored in n and immediately added to the cumulative sum we already have. Okay. And when I am entering 0, so now it is waiting here. Scanf is waiting here for user to enter the next number. That is 0. Sum plus 0 is 0 only. So same number only. So no change in the cumulative sum. But here the condition becomes 0 not equal to 0 is false. 0 not equal to 0 is false. We come out of the loop and print the value of sum. So we get the value of numbers entered by the user. As many numbers entered by the user. As long as user is not entering 0, this loop is going to continue. Okay. So I can keep entering any number of numbers and I will be finally getting. So when I am done with entering all the numbers, I am going to enter 0. 0 not equal to 0 will become false now, and we will come out of the loop and sum of all the numbers I entered so far will be printed. Okay, that is one application of that is the application of do while. While loop we are using before the looping statement. We are clear about the termination condition. Okay. Now in this case we get a proper value for n only within the body of the loop, and based on that value we have to decide whether to continue or not. For that, executing this body at least once is essential now. In such scenario we can use do while. Okay, there are different other scenarios, just one example I am showing. Okay, now this can be achieved using a while loop. Also the same thing can be achieved with some additional statements. We can achieve the same functionality with a while loop also. Okay. So clear do while loop?
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yeah.
Since you said that the do statement, I mean, whatever is written below do should always be executed.
At least once, yeah.
Yes. So once if you execute it and put 0 as the n value,
Yeah.
how does it not execute? Because it is supposed to take in, right?
No, see n value I am putting it 0 here, irrespective of n value I am putting here 0.
No. Like when you execute it and
yeah. So when I execute, see every time I am getting a new value for n, right? Every time I am getting a new value for n. So first time when I am entering 5, n gets 5, and at the end the condition is checked again. Every time this condition will be checked. So and first time 5 not equal to 0 is what I am actually checking.
What if you enter 0 as the first number? Isn't it supposed to like
Yeah, if you enter 0 as the first number, second time it will not execute only.
but you said that do statement should execute once only, then it will come to the while statement, right?
Yeah. So do statement will execute minimum once. Okay. Now this is now if I am entering 0 first time, second time it will not execute. So n, if n is equal to 0, it will become 0 not equal to 0. That is false. So this is not going to execute one more time. So minimum one time execution is guaranteed.
Okay.
Okay. So first time itself if I enter 0, second time it will not execute. So minimum one time execution is guaranteed. So while condition is whether to execute one more iteration of the loop. That is the question addressed by this while loop, while statement. Whether to run one more execution, one more round of one more iteration. Okay. This looks like a reasonably good program for do while loop. So you can make it the next assignment question. Okay. So I have my hash include. Even if I did not include added hash include there, still my program was working because these recent compilers will automatically take care of basic header files. So this header file will be there in almost all the program, but this will be happening only in recent versions of the C compiler. So as a safety measure, you always include that. So this can be your next assignment statement. Sum of okay, n should be here. Okay, we'll just execute once. Okay. So you can snap it. Okay. If you want, you can take a snap. So ninth question of your assignment. Now we will quickly move on to next one, nested loops, or anything before that. No. Quickly move on to nested loops. So for that we will take a simple while loop. Now when we studied if statement, we studied that we can within an if statement, either in the if block or in the else block, we can put an independent if else statement again, or that is called nesting of if statement or nested if else statement. Within the if block, you put another independent if else block. Within the next first level or second level, you put another if else block. So that way, nesting of if else statement was possible. Similarly, it is possible to do nesting here also. Okay. So basically, it means I will put another variable j less than. Okay. Num. Okay, j less than num. Okay. So this is my outer loop, and within the loop body I have an independent. I can have an independent while loop one more time. This is my outer loop. This is my inner loop. I will call this as the outer loop, and this as the inner loop. Now within this inner loop, I can, if I want, I can put one more. So this way of putting additional loops within the body of a loop, we call it as nested looping. And here it is nested while loop. The syntax is very much similar to your single simple while loop. So this is the body, and in the body of the loop I can put another loop. So here also I can add some other statements. That is fine. Outer loop, inner loop. Okay. Here I have used a control variable I, and based on the value of I, it is going to execute. Here I have used a different control variable. If I want, if my logic demands, I can use the same control variable also. So basically what I want to say is we can do the nesting of while loops theoretically infinite times. Okay, practically based on the logic of our program, we will do the nesting. Now there are two levels of nesting, the outer loop and one inner loop. Okay, here also I can put. Now I'll put some logic here. Say this one, enter an integer. It is going to sign this up. Probably I'll just keep it constant. Let's not depend on this as of now. Okay. So I'll put I is equal to 0. I'll put j also. Another control variable for the inner loop. Okay. Now I'll put j less than maybe 4. J less than 4. Now what will happen if I run in this format? Okay. Semicolon should not be there. So to keep it simple, I'll remove that statement also. So I have two loops now, one within other loop, one outer loop and one inner loop, and this whole thing is the body of the outer loop. And for the inner loop, there is only one statement. Body of the inner loop is only one statement. Now what will happen if I run this now? Again, many compilation errors. Okay, compilation errors are done. If I run this now, I'm getting messages infinite times. Inner loop message I'm getting infinite times. Inner loop message I'm getting infinite times. Anyway, this will execute infinite times, right? Both the loops are going to execute infinite time, but I'm getting only an infinite loop for the inner loop allowed. Because what will happen is, first I is 0 less than 5. I equal to 0, 0 less than 5 is checked, it is true. Once it will execute this statement. After that it is going to enter inner loop, and from inner loop it is never going to come, it is not going to come out from inner loop. Because j less than 4, j is equal to 0, j less than 4 is always true, 0 less than 4 is always true, we are not modifying j. Because of that, it is stuck in the inner loop. So after entering the outer loop, we are stuck in the inner loop. Okay. Now if I have to come out of the inner loop, what should I do? I should modify this control variable within the body of the inner loop such that j less than 4 sometimes evaluate to false. Okay, now my inner loop is not an infinite loop because I keep incrementing the value of j. Initially it was 0, it will become 1. Forget about the outer loop, what happens in the inner loop. Initially it was 0, then it becomes 1, then 2, then 3, 3 less than 4 is true. Then it becomes 4, 4 less than 4 is false. So we will come out of the outer loop, the inner loop. Now what is the behavior, we will see. we keep getting outer loop message. Why is that? What can be the reason? Can you think of the logic? What is resulting in outer loop? This message coming for infinite times.
I is always less than 5, that's why.
Yeah, we are not modifying the value of I. So what I'll do is I'll keep so I is a control variable of the outer loop. So I am not putting I plus 1 here. Rather, I'll prefer to put I plus 1 here. I is equal to I plus 1. Okay. Now we'll see what is the behavior. So first time outer loop message came. This message, first time we are entering 0 less than 5, and we entered outer loop message came. Then we get into the inner loop. First this is the statement, then the inner loop. Now inner loop is going to execute 4 times. For j is equal to 0, j is equal to 1, j is equal to 2, j is equal to 3. Inner loop is going to execute 4 times. Then 4 less than 4, j becomes 4, 4 less than 4 is false. We come out of the inner loop, increment the value of I. So this is part of the outer loop body. So increment the value of I becomes 1. We go here. Now 1 less than 5. It is true. We come inside and print this message, outer loop. After that, it is not executing the statement inner loop, right? Why is it so? After that I get outer loop one more time, third time. Outer loop I got here once in the beginning, second time, third time, fourth time. Okay, I get one more time. Here also it is there. So first time, second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time. Why inner loop is not coming? Initially after outer loop message, 4 times I am getting inner loop message. But second time outer loop message, I am not getting our inner loop message anymore. What could be the reason?
You had written increment value after inner loop.
Yeah, the first time itself, see, first time when we executed this 4 times, we came out of the inner loop because j value reached 4. Now after incrementing I, we came back here, printed this, j value is still 4 only. I am not changing it at all. So initially when I was here, j value was 0. Because of that, inner loop 1 time, second time, third time, fourth time. So j value reached 4, value 4. Then we executed I is equal to I plus 1. We again executed outer loop. But j value is still 4. I did not modify after that. So because of that, second iteration, in the second iteration of the outer loop, this thing is happening in the first iteration of the outer loop. So this slash n I should have put here so that it's not creating much confusion. So I'll execute it one more time. We get the same output. Okay. Hey, I did not combine. Okay. So we talked about iterations. One round of execution of any loop is called an iteration. Okay. Now in the first iteration of, now we have two loops. One is the inner loop and one is the outer loop and the other is the inner loop. Each loop, both the loops are going to have its own iterations. Now we are in the first iteration, we print this message. First iteration of the outer loop, we print this message. Then we get into the inner loop. inner loop has got 4 iterations and j value became 4. Inner loop had 4 iterations and j value became 4. Then we go out of the inner loop and the outer loop body, the last statement which is part of the outer loop body, it is executed. I value became 1. 1 less than 5. This message is printed. 1 less than 5 is true. This message is printed. Now again it is trying to enter into the inner loop. Now the condition is checked. J is equal to 4. 4 less than 4 is false. So this will not execute. That is why we are not getting inner loop again. We are not going to enter into the inner loop body again because J value already reached its maximum value such that this condition is false. Now I is increases to 2 now. Here 2 less than 5 is true. We are going to execute outer loop one more time. Then I becomes 3. Execute this. I becomes 4. Execute this. I becomes 5. 5 less than 5 is false. We come out of the outer loop also. So what I mean to say is, what happens here, whenever you execute one iteration of the outer loop, every time it is trying to execute the inner loop. First time all the iterations of the inner loop is happening, but second time onwards inner loop is not executed completely. No iterations of the inner loop happens. Okay. So what was the problem? J became maximum value first time itself. Second time, in the second iteration of outer loop, if we are when we are trying to enter into inner loop, J already got 4 and it is not going. This will be evaluated to false. So what I do is I set it to 0 every time here. Previously I was doing it here only once. So in the beginning of the program it got j equal to 0. Now instead of that, probably I will remove that and I will put j is equal to 0 here. Okay. And now I am going to execute this again. Okay, now I am going to execute. Setting j equal to 0, I am doing here. What is the implication? Every time the outer loop is executed, j value, whatever may be the value, current value, it is going to be overwritten as 0. J value will be updated as 0. Okay. So what will be the impact of that? We will execute and see. Okay, it's slightly exceeding it, so number of executions I'll reduce. This I'll make it 3 and this I'll make it 2, so that we don't exceed the screen. Okay, so first time 0 less than 3, I is equal to 0, j is not having any value as of now. 0 less than 3, we entered the inner loop and this message is printed. After that, j is equal to 0 I am setting. 0 less than 2, that is also true. Inner loop is executed. J is incremented to 1. We come here and check 1 less than 2, that is true. Inner loop is one more time executed. Then j becomes 2. 2 less than 2 is false. We come out of the inner loop but continue with the body of the outer loop. Here I is equal to I plus 1. I becomes 2. 1. I was 0. I becomes 1. 1 less than 3. That is true. We enter into the body of the outer loop and this message is printed. Then j is reset to 0. J was, when I was here in the previous iteration, j was 2. That's why we came out of this loop. Now again I am resetting it to 0. So this time 0 less than 2 is going to happen and we are going to enter the inner loop and inner loop is executed 2 times. 2 iteration of the inner loop is happening. Okay. Now j value becomes 2. 2 less than 2. Here it is incremented in every iteration of the inner loop. So 2 less than 2 is false. We come out here. I becomes 2. I was 0, then I was incremented to 1, now I becomes 2. 2 less than 3 is true. One more time we enter into the outer loop. This is printed here. J is reset to 0. J less than 2, 0 less than 2. I am going to execute the inner loop 2 times, and then J becomes 2, 2 less than 2 is false, we come out here. I is equal to 3, 3 less than 3 is false, we come out of the outer loop also. So what essentially I want to tell is, when we have a nested loop, for every iteration of the outer loop, all possible iterations of the inner loop is going to repeat. For every iteration of the outer loop, all possible iterations of the inner loop is going to repeat. Or complete inner loop is executed for all every iteration of the outer loop. Okay. Now, how many times my inner loop message is coming? Say inner loop 2, inner loop 4, inner loop 6. Okay. Now I'll just comment out this and just have inner loop only. Inner loop message is coming 6 times. Total 6 times inner loop message is coming. Now I am going to change this to 4, and this I am going to change it to, again I am going to keep it 2 only. Now can you tell me how many times this message will come? Can you tell me? Just think of it, how many times inner loop message will come. Just now I set a statement, for every iteration of the outer loop, all iterations of the inner loop is going to happen, or complete iterations of the inner loop is going to happen. Can you tell me how many times inner loop message will come on the screen?
Is it 6?
Here you see outer loop, how many times it is executing? For 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4.
Is that 7?
Pardon?
7.
Let's again how many times outer loop is going to execute now? For 0 it will execute, 1 it will execute, 2 it will execute, 3 it will execute. 3 less than 4 is true. But for I is equal to 4, it is not going to execute. That means outer loop is going to execute 4 times. Now every time I am setting j is equal to 0 and my condition is j less than 2. So for every iteration of outer loop, how many times inner loop is going to execute?
8 times.
2 times. J is equal to 0, j is equal to 1. 0 and 1. J is equal to 2, this will not execute, right? 2 less than 2 is false. So for I is equal to 0, 1, 2 and 3, inner loop will be executed. For the value of I, 0, 1, 2 and 3, that means 4 times outer loop will be executed 4 times for the values 0, 1, 2 and 3. Inner loop will be executed 2 times for every iteration of the outer loop. So the total number of times this message will come will be 4 into 3. 4 into 2. 4 is how many times the outer loop is going to execute, and 2 is how many, for every iteration of the outer loop, how many times the inner loop is going to execute. So 8 times this message will come. This message comes because body of this inner loop is executed. Okay. So we get 4 plus 4. 8 times it is going to execute. I'll just use a counter. I'll use a counter to keep track of how many times it is executing. I'll do count plus plus, or count I will use and I will increment count value. Now inner loop message will come along with a count also. So it is easy for you to track. 8 times. 4 times outer loop will be executed. 4 iterations of outer loop. For every iteration of the outer loop, 2 iterations of the inner loop is going to happen. For j is equal to 0 and j is equal to 1. Because I am resetting j value to 0 here until j value becomes 2, or for j value 0 and 1, this is going to execute. Is it clear now? 8 times, because outer loop 4 iterations, and for every iteration of outer loop, inner loop 2 iterations. Now if I change it to 3, how many times inner loop message will come? Very simple. How many times? Just check how many times outer loop is going to
12
execute.
times.
That is remaining same, 4 iterations of outer loop. How many times inner loop is going to execute? For j value 0, 1 and 2. That means 3 times inner loop is going to execute. There are 3 iterations of the inner loop. So for every iteration of outer loop, 3 times 3 iterations of the inner loop. So the total number of times the inner loop body will be executed, or this message will be displayed, will be 4 into 3, 12 times. Okay. So my counter is increased from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 to 12. 0 is not there. 1 to 12, my counter shows. So 12 times. So basically, the essence whatever I explained so far is that how many times your total the inner loop body will be executed based on how many iterations of the outer loop is there, and for every iteration how many times the inner loop going to execute, how many inner loop iterations are going to be there. Okay, so this looks to be a good program to understand certain things. So we will 0, 1, 2, 3 times. So 4 into 3, 12. We can take a snapshot of this and we can make it the next assignment program. Inner nested looping. Hope it is clear, and we'll maybe it's time now. We'll continue in the next class. Okay. If it is not clear, we'll
Sir,
have one more. Yeah.
down.
Yeah. Tell me.
Sir, scroll it down.
Okay. I'll just make it a little smaller. Yeah. So basically, nest.
So if we use plus plus I instead of I plus plus, is it the same result?
Same result. Where I am using it plus plus I. Yeah. If it is an independent statement, plus plus I and I plus plus will be same. But if you have an LHS, something like this, x is equal to plus plus I or x is equal to I plus plus, there will be a difference. That I have explained in that operator. You can go back there in that video and just see that. If it is an independent statement, there is no LHS equal to RHS notation format, then there is no difference, plus plus I and I plus plus. Okay, then it's time. We'll continue in the next class and you can take this assignments question.